Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. It is about it's 8:42 on a beautiful Tuesday morning. The weather has been super amazing. This has been like, we're kind of almost in the middle of August already, but this has been one of the most this has been one of the best summers I think I've had in a long time. It's been very hot, unusually hot. We had a lot of hot weather this summer, like where it's been consecutive one day, one week after the next, and it's definitely been hotter than it normally is for long periods of time. I like the hot weather, but there were days where I was like, or even weeks where I was like, wow, like it's pretty hot, and you know, but it's been beautiful, and we've had in the past so much rain during the summer, so it was really nice to have this summer go. But lately, it's been pretty normal as far as temperatures go and all those things. And the reason I bring that up is like a lot of the times for me, for with playing gigs, and then also other musicians that I know, a ton of other musicians that I know that play gigs and play lots of gigs in this season. That's a big part of it because we have to be outside half all of the time, and so you have to kind of be aware of the weather and all of those things. And so, and then also in my free time, I love to go see, try to see as much live music as I can. And so last year, I know, for instance, there was lots of cancellations, because of the weather or rescheduling. But this year there hasn't been, so it's been really nice. So the other thing that I'm really excited about, they got two quantum shows coming up back to back on this Friday, this coming Friday at the there's a really great brew pub that we've actually played. We've actually played there quite a few times with Quantum. We've played there about maybe four or five times. I think this might be our fifth gig that we've played there. But great place, really awesome venue. And it's a really great brew pub, and we're gonna be playing a set of music, two sets at the Poor Farm at 5 o'clock this coming Friday with Quantum. So stay tuned for that. And there is a big festival coming up on Saturday that we are also going to be playing at with Quantum. That I'm pretty psyched about. It's a it's being put on by some friends and people that I happen to play music with, and that and also a bunch of folks that are involved with the show or people that I really think are great people, and they I've had experience doing this festival for almost 8 years, I believe. So this isn't it's a new thing, but it's not going to be like totally seat of your pants. It's not going to be run that way, and that is going to be the Woodstick festival that's coming up this Saturday. There's been a lot of promotion for it, so you'll see, especially on social media. But anyway, we're going to be playing a quantum set at this festival on Saturday night, and we're going to be going on the later side around midnight. But it's really excited about it. There's a whole bunch. There's 15 bands playing at this festival. It's in Monroe, which is pretty close to here, or I should say, not Monroe, Morrill. And there's going to be food vendors. There's going to be food and vendors. There's going to be camping sites available. There's going to be two stages going. There's going to be a big stage, a main stage, and there's going to be a side stage, and there's going to be all kinds of music. Everything from folk to rock to electronic music. So it should be really cool. Solo artists. There's going to be a funk band, I believe, playing at the very end of the night. There's going to be theatrics, so there's going to be, I think, people selling and showing their art. There's going to be a couple of tables of those kinds of things. So, yeah, very excited about that. And that's going to be on Saturday, and it starts at noon and goes until late, like 2 or so in the morning. So it will be a party. And so and we will be playing a Quantum set. I'm playing there with a few other bands, but we'll be playing there with Quantum late night Saturday. We will be the second. There's two other bands after us essentially playing, so or two other groups. So we'll be playing in the tail end of the festival. So we'll see what happens, and it should be fun. So today's show is on a movie that I watched actually last night with my girlfriend, and we watched this movie that I actually been wanting to see. I almost saw it in the theater, and that is A Quiet Place Day One. That was it came out actually this year. Came out really recently. It was directed by Michael Sarnowski, who is a pretty brilliant director. I mean, I've seen one of his films. I don't believe he directed any other movies. He directed a movie called Pig with Nicolas Cage, which is a just an amazing film. I kind of feel it's a masterpiece. It's one of my favorite Nicolas Cage movies of all time. And I don't think anybody is aware of this movie. I don't know anybody who's seen it personally. It's a one of the most original movies I've ever seen, and one of the most well, it's just so hard to classify. It's not. It's got little elements of different genres, melodrama, maybe a mystery, maybe a little bit of, like a revenge kind of vibe to it, a little bit of a horror element to it, but it's not any of those things. Like it's got and it's kind of surrealistic. It's really kind of funny too, very strange at times. It has a very European kind of flair to it, like art house. But again, it's got all those little things going for it, but yet it's not one of those styles. It's not really a part of any of those styles. It's very one of the most unique and also unusual, and one of the most original movies. So I was kind of excited to hear that Michael Sarnowski was going to be directing the Quiet Place prequel, because this is the prequel. This is a prequel to the Quiet Place films that, of course, are very very good movies. I love the first two. I think they are pretty phenomenal as far as like newer horror films. I think they are potentially some. Well, they're definitely some of the best as far as like newer or more modern horror films. I think they are definitely amongst like the best, some of the best movies that have been made. A Quiet Place, the first one came out in 2000. I'm sorry, 2018, I believe, and 2018, the very first one came out, and it was directed and written by, of course, John Krasinski from The Office. This was a huge departure. It came out of nowhere when the first one came out. Especially from someone John Krasinski who was a very popular actor, definitely known for being a great kind of comedian or actor in a comedic show, The Office. And I've always thought he's great personality, very talented. So, but it was very surprising that he was like going to be directing a horror film. It was going to be his first movie, and I remember seeing an interview with him that he was going to, he had been wanting to kind of do his own project for a very long time. So it was interesting that it was going to be a horror film, and it also stars his wife Emily Blunt. And the first one I think is just an incredible movie. I mean, you talk about nail biting suspense and really building tension and really like building this building this unique world. And it's an incredible movie. I think it's one of the best kind of alien invasion films, if you want to call it that, scenario, end of the world scenario films that's ever been made. And then there was the sequel that came out a few years later, which again I think is inc- incredible. And the sequence of the order of the second one is basically, you know, a little bit before that, the current situation or the situation from the first one, how this family more or less arrived. And the second one, I think, is an incredible film. I almost think, as good as A Quiet Place is, the first one, I almost think the second one might be a little bit better, just because of the level of suspense. Everything is ratcheted up, and it's able to sustain it. And the other interesting thing about it, I recently watched those films again. I own both of them on Blu-ray now, and especially the first one. The second one, again, is it has a lot of the same attributes, but it almost acts like a silent film. It's really interesting. I forgot how little dialogue there is in that, and how quiet it is, and it's so it's such a pot boiler. It's such a great, you know, thing of what you don't see is often the most scary. They don't show, there isn't the monster reveal until pretty late in the film, and when you do see it, it's these very small, you know, clips or views of of these aliens, and I love that. It's so highly effective, but it just, they're able to sustain this tension in the film, or establish this tension and sustain it all the way through both films. And I think that is one of the greatest. And you really care about the characters. You really want to see them survive. And I think it really puts you in this cockpit, or puts you in this feeling like you're sitting in this situation of, how do you survive in this, in a real world worst case scenario. And I think they did it. John Krasinski did it brilliantly in both films. And Emily Blunt too. The cast is just great, fantastic. So I was curious to see what Quiet Place Day One was going to be like, because this film was going to be, or is, a a tale of the actual alien invasion, of when they first came to the the planet Earth, and the first city that they attack is New York City. And so that opens up the story to many different things. And initially, I heard a fair a fair amount of pretty mixed reviews, mostly good reviews for this film. But from what I saw and from what I heard, that it was a kind of a mixed bag. And some things I agree with. And again, that's what the main thing is about the show. Some things I kind of agree with, some things didn't bother me. The biggest thing about this film that people complain about, which is, I thought, kind of funny, kind of odd, but I get it, is that there is a character in this film that is, well, a cat. And it's the cat acts as almost a main character in the film, or is at least in almost every scene. And a lot of people said that that was annoying, and that it became this thing of where the the area around the story that you could believe was lessened because of that. It became more unrealistic because of how this cat survived, or how this cat kind of interacted with a lot of these characters. And to be honest, I didn't really even think of this cat as being like this main focus of the story. It didn't really bother me. I didn't really think about it. It didn't, again, it wasn't like I knew the cat was in the film. I saw a lot of people complaining about it. I get that, but it wasn't really a concern. It wasn't enough to take me out of the film. It was, yeah, I thought it was a good choice for what it was in the film. But it didn't make me feel like it was I didn't feel distracted by that. The cast is really great for this film. Um, Joseph Quinn, Alex Wolff, Lupita Nyong'o, who is a really fantastic actress. She was in quite a few movies. I believe she was in, yeah, she was in Us by Jordan Peele, which I think is an awesome movie. But really great actress. She is the lead of this film, and she really carries it. There are some really great moments in this film as far as like the characterization. You know, some good kind of probing things about these characters, like trying to come to terms with this well, you know, this end of the world scenario. Joshua Jackson is really great. Alex Wolff, you know, some really great actors in this. Joseph Quinn, and the movie takes place in New York City, so there is more of the budget for this film is it looks very big, but it's not like over bloated. I like the movie's beautifully shot. I think the cinematography is really great. One of the criticism that I heard about this movie was that they don't really go into any details whatsoever about why the aliens are here. Why did they invade the planet? What is their motivation, or some kind of backstory as to who or what they are? What is their thing? Because it's never really indicated. It's not at all indicated in the first two films. But I personally, I kind of feel like that is a really good element of those two films, is that you don't know, and you don't really need to know. And I think it's kind of cool to maybe imagine those things on your own, in your own terms. You know, I don't need an explanation of that, of those things. But honestly, watching this film, I felt like it was a little bit more of the same, of virtually the same thing we've seen before. It was kind of more of the same thing. And which is good, but then could be something that hinders your experience, or maybe makes it a little bit more, I don't know, mediocre of an experience, or you know, just it's not as impactful. They established something. John Krasinski established something really interesting and really unique and exciting. You know, a horror, this like sci-fi horror thriller film that was very unique and gave you, you know, an experience. And it feels, to a degree, it's kind of the same thing again. And I feel like the second one gave you those same elements, but things were heightened. It was a little bit, there were some different angles around the storytelling. It really had an interesting kind of narrative, like the backstory and the sequence of the order of, you know, of how they told the second story, Quiet Place Two. And the one comparison I can make it to is Deadpool and Deadpool Two. Deadpool is, I did a review on Deadpool and Wolverine two weeks ago or so. Really fantastic movie. Can't recommend it enough. Huge Deadpool fan. I think the first Deadpool is a master, like just a complete masterpiece. And again, it's kind of similar. Where that movie, when it first came out, it was highly original. It was doing something different. It was really, it just felt fresh. And when I first saw Quiet Place, it felt kind of like an old school horror film, but it felt fresh and unique, and bold. And I was getting, I was seeing something new and original, and I was glued to my seat the entire time. And when Deadpool 2 came out, it was basically, for all intents and purposes, they tried to replicate the same exact thing. You know, they created a formula. Tim Miller created a formula. Ryan Reynolds created this certain kind of formula that worked on every, in every possible way. John Krasinski created this formula, this concoction that was just perfectly sound and, you know, was spot on, flawless, and it was unique. So I kind of feel like with Deadpool 2, it was kind of a replication of those things. And it's like, again, it's a really good movie, but it's just, to me, it doesn't have that impact as this first one. There's something about it that just feels not as invigorating. And it's a personal thing, and I kind of feel that's what happens with A Quiet Place day one, where it's kind of more of the same, and you do get more things. You get more. It's a bigger budget. Obviously, it's taking place in New York City. There's more aliens. There's more people. There's more factors. You're in this massive, massive metropolis of a city. So there's all of these other things that are happening, and with that, they they surprisingly the film, John's they I say they did a pretty surprising job with not showing you quite as much as you think you would have to see in a film of this size. They given the scope, it's the size and scope of this film, they they actually, it feels somewhat scaled down to a degree. You actually see there is quite a bit left up to your imagination, which I thought was an effective kind of way to go. Like, there aren't these giant battle scenes. You don't see literally what happens to the military. You get like these glimpses of this destruction, and you get this sense of the sheer, the disorientation and the sheer chaos of what's going on. But you don't quite see everything, and I like that. Where, if it was, say, if the film was handled by lesser talented people that just weren't as, as effective or as good of a director, they would have probably shown these like large scale battles and things of that nature. And I like that it was kind of scaled down a little bit. But I also, that being said, I also feel like it was kind of more of the same. And and there's been two arguments. I kind of feel like it would have been cool if there was some opening to the idea of what's the deal with this alien species, like something, whether it was about why are they here, what where are they from, how do they travel, why are they only going to this part of the world, how do they, how, what kind of, how high is their actual intelligence, what is their, how old they might, just various questions that would have been interesting to get, or to have presented, or to get some kind of, to get, to a degree, a few answers around those things. And I one of the reviews I had heard that I saw about this film, that was a criticism, and I get it. So Michael's, Sarnowski was the director of this film, and I had I had heard and seen a video and read about it where there was a cut of this film that was quite a bit longer, and they had decided to, I guess there's a cut or an edition of this film of where there is a little bit more of a dive into who these aliens are, but they decided to cut a couple of those things out of the film because it didn't test very well, and that it dragged the film down a little bit. But overall, the film, from what I gather, was set out this way, and it was this kind of preconceived thing of where they didn't really want to give that they didn't want to give that information away. There are a couple little things in the film that you get, you do get some new things around the aliens, the behavior and how they interact, but it's still the same thing. But from what I saw in this article and from what I read, they that was the intention of this film. It wasn't, they didn't want to have to divulge too much, and I get that, and it does stick with some of those things, some of the reasons I do love the first two so much. But I will say, and I think that this movie was given a little bit of a beating to a degree by certain critics, and I will say I think this film is better than I thought it would be in a lot of ways. I don't think it's as good as the first two. I think it's pretty good. I think it suffers a little bit because it's a little bit of the same old. You're seeing a lot of the same things again, and it's so. Whereas the first two, it feels fresh and new. It feels a little bit of the same. It suffers from sameness, if that's a word. And it would have been cool if there was some glimmer or thing into what these aliens were actually about. I think it would have been cool to like go into that to a certain degree. That was really, you know, those two things are the only kind of criticisms I have of this film. Overall, I think it was good. It was pretty solid. I don't know if it was. I'm glad I didn't see it in the theater. I don't know. I almost saw it when it came out in the theater, but I'm kind of glad I didn't. It's more of a video rental, I think. Visually, it's beautiful, and it is definitely like a science fiction, a really good science fiction horror experience, and it's visceral, but not as good as the first two, and those two things are my only grievances with the film. But I think it is a pretty good movie in a lot of ways. But at the same time, I kind of don't want them to make any more of these, which they probably will. But I kind of feel like they should just let it go. It's good. It's not fantastic. So, yeah, this is Jason Dean, and thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.